Our topic for today is demonstrating the new Anaplan Supply Chain Apps. And we're going to start today's by specifically focusing on demand planning. Before we get into it, first, a quick introduction of our Accelytics team. Our team consists of experienced subject matter experts and talented certified Anaplan model builders. Today we have Matt Russell, Mark Chisholm, Taylor Braley, Logan Jones, and Michael LaHood. This week we wanted to start demonstrating Anaplan's new supply chain apps. There's a lot to see and a lot in them, and we're eager to show you. We'll start with demand planning, but we can do further sessions on supply and S&OP after. So, for quick intro, we'll do history correction with Matt Russell. Then Logan will do new products development. Taylor will do product segmentation. Mark will do promotions. And then I'll follow that up with opportunity management. And we'll try to do some hands-on demo for each of these. These are all sections or specific parts of the demand planning app that we thought were worth talking about because they're important pieces of the process. So what Anaplan supply chain planning solutions are, there's really 5 major areas, everything from stat forecasting to S&OP. But the solutions consist of industry-wide, tried and true best practices. These are complete end-to-end solutions. They are ready to run out of the box without customization. They are also completely customizable on the powerful Anaplan platform. So you can deploy something and extend the use or customize it to fit you more like a glove if you so choose, but you don't need to do that. Also, these applications integrate easily with any existing system or any new use case that you may imagine, and there are limitless numbers of those. So today's demos, they focus on demand planning process as depicted in the flow diagram here. This includes the stat modeling side and the enrichments parts of demand planning. So we'll get into those in a little more detail now. So without any further ado, let me hand it over to Matt, and then Matt can take the screen share and do the history correction, and then we'll go from there.
Good afternoon, folks. This is Matt Russell. I'm going to walk you through the history correction process. So where we're talking about in the process is very early, right? Your order history is coming in here. You're feeding off to supply planning out here. Where we are right here is history correction. I've generally referred to this as history management, just because your history is correct, but it does need to be managed. So just a quick reminder that outliers are not good or bad. They just are and should be anticipated. All data sets are going to have outliers, but not having an outlier would be an outlier. So statistically speaking, there has to be a few clean data sets out there, but the majority of what we see is not clean. So as a planner, I need the ability to easily identify and address these outliers in accordance to my business process rules. Do want to take one moment. I want to call out that we're walking through statistical outliers. If you have peaks that were generated by promotion and you can identify that promotion specific period, you would reduce your chain history by your promotional volume first before running it through this corrected. But that's kind of, from what I've seen, a holy grail. We haven't run into a lot of customers that can actually identify within a sales period X number of units was because of the sale and Y number of units is our base salary or base run. So we start with the selected history in. We've got calc-based identifying the outliers. We can auto-correct those. We can manually correct those. So there's really 2 pieces of logic here. Firstly, it's parameters and logic to determine when a data value is flagged as an outlier. And secondly, parameters to determine how we address the outlier. And, history correction can generate many outliers in your history. Reality is you're probably not going to want your planners to go through each and every one. And we do have the ability to set this as automated correct, or you can flag it item as manually corrected. But honestly, if you have, I don't know, what's the reasonable SKU count? 25,000 SKUs, and you have to look at those across let's just call it at 500 customers, you're looking at a lot of base value there that you're probably going to want to weed out and address the important ones, but also allow the system to do the work as well. So what does Anaplan have? What are we going to do? We're going to manage the parameters. We're going to correct from. That defines the data set from the baseline where the outlier will be determined. The outlier magnitude. And so this is the upper and lower limits. The magnitude is the number of standard deviations if you're correcting from the mean of the product. If it is from the trend or the trend seasonal, you're using the root mean squared deviations for those who are really tied to the math and important to the math. We have to tell the system what to correct. Spikes is when we go above the upper limit. Dips are when we go below. Correct to and correct period by period. Down below, we've got some one-offs that are really meant to set up at system startup and not really managed on an ongoing basis. So we won't see these parameters, the minimum periods of history, substitute from seasonal trend, substitute to seasonal trend. Those are going to stay on the global parameters page, but are tools that Anaplan lets you have. So, let's just start and look at Anaplan itself. Here's your landing page. We're at product 1 for Walmart USA. For our purposes, this is the lowest level of our hierarchies, but in reality, you would be working your history correction at the level of hierarchy you're planning at, right? So if you're working up in product family, you'd be correcting your history at product family. So our first choice up here is we get to edit the parameters. And so our choices are, we can correct from mean or from trend. Right now we're seeing that this is from trend, right? If we want to set mean as our outlier, we select that. The system spins for a second or two while it's determining where it's going. And now we see that our outliers, these points above the graph, are still outliers, but we're not seeing the growth rate that we expect. Usually, most of the time, what we see is correction from a trend, and then it's in order of magnitude. So right now, we're set at in the order of magnitude of 1. That's fairly tight. See a lot of places use 2 here, so we can adjust the 2, and we're going to see these lines expand in fewer outliers. See, by expanding to 2, we pulled a lot of the peaks are now within our range of normalcy, so to speak. We can turn off corrections. We can just affect the spikes. We can just do the dips, or we could do both. And correct to, we can correct to the mean, we can correct to the trend or the trend seasonal, or just down to the limit. And so for me, when I'm thinking, if I can consistently identify, well, this is good, this is promotional volume, I don't want to just bring that down to the limit, which a lot of folks do. If I know that I'm running a promotion, I might want to just bring that down to the mean or to the trend rather than just bringing it down a little bit. And again, as we clump this data in here, our coefficient of variation becomes better as we go through. And so finally, in this edit parameters, the period by period, this is yes or no. And so if it is no, it is available for auto correct. When I set period by period to yes, over here on the right side, my period by period box is marked, so I can remember, I can go back and forth in history, and I can mark ones that I've addressed manually or ones that still need to be manual. And then additionally, we can decide up here how many years of history we want to show. If we delete that number entirely, we get full history, and we can view the period type in terms of a fiscal year or a rolling year. We're going to leave that blank so we just see all of our history. If I turn back off period to period, you can see my check boxes and ability goes away here. And then finally, if we really want, what we can do down here is manual correction in units. So we can just go into any week we want. Let's go out here where we got some volume. And if we really want to, we can just hit 1,000, 15,000, 15,000. And now we can see our peaks are coming up here. They're violating the limit because we're writing those in. And that is pretty much your history correction landing page. There are 4 pages in here overall that talk to history correction. We got this landing page and dashboard where your planners are going to spend most of the time. We've got a history correction summary, right? So we can take a look here, and for this product 1 for Walmart USA, we see that we're getting a 1% correction or a 1% increase in our baseline forecast just based on what we're doing for corrections alone. We can see the coefficient of variation and what happens on the mean, on the trend, and the residual. And you can see an year by year impact in terms of a chained history, which is your actual history, system corrected history, then the final corrected history. That's where you're going to pull in the stuff that the planners have done. Anaplan also provides you with a full history audit. So you can go through any numbers and see where the manual corrections were, what was a chained history, what was a system suggesting at that time. And then finally, we do have an outlier alert page. So I can come in here and look at product. I can look at Walmart USA, and here are my alerts, the breaches above, breaches below, and I can take a look at my product summary there. Here we're also allowed to list the number of periods to analyze and the percentage of the outliers for period. Here I've got 2%, but if I said I only want to look at things that breach by 10% or greater, my alerts go way down. And now I'm only looking, 13, 11, 4. So you can use this beginning with a large and work your way down as your planning tolerances become finer, as your systems become more eloquent. And so that's my introduction to history correction. And I would like to hand it off at this point to Mr. Jones, who is going to walk us through new product development.
Hello, my name is Logan Jones. I'll be going over the new products development portion of the app. And so at this point, we can see where we're at within the process flow for our demand and inventory. And then, so kind of what we're doing with the new products development is providing planners the ability to incorporate new products into their forecast planning in real time. And with the Anaplan app, this kind of makes it a little bit more easy, more accurate, and provides more accurate, efficient, and manageable forecasts while incorporating these new products. And then within the app itself, there's a few key features that we'll go over that allows you to kind of make the forecast more manageable and accurate for you as you plan out your new products. And those will be the launch profiles and cannibalization of existing products. So we'll go ahead and dive into the app now. So this is going to be kind of the initial landing page for the app itself, but we're going to take a step back real quick so we can kind of see where the process kind of starts. So this is kind of like the first section of the product lifecycle management, which will also include some end of life, but we won't be going over that in this video. But this is kind of just a nice little kind of page for you kind of see what MPI products you have active, what end of life products, and then just give you some slight overviews of kind of some revenues and MPI contributions we have for these. And today we're going to be primarily living within this brand 3 and Amazon USA, just for the sake of ease. And so our next section is going to be kind of how we will start to set up the new products. You see here, this is a page where you can kind of manage them, set them into new product or EOL override statuses, as well as choose the MPA start dates will be essential for having that kind of real-time updates with your forecast. And so next we'll dive back into the landing page for the new product developments. And as you can see here, we can have a visual that can allow you to track across your company, kind of at what point you're at in the product development phase. So as you can see here, as you mark them through, it'll just keep that highlighted. That way, anyone who comes to the page knows what point we're at for this new 16-inch laptop. And then we'll kind of get more into the nitty-gritty of it all. So for here, this is where we're going to, let me unlock this real quick. This is where this will allow us to kind of manually input our values for setting up this new product, as we won't have any forecasts necessarily being produced from our data imports at this time. And the key kind of thing in here is that these data values will kind of trigger how your forecast is being built out. And here we can see with this launch curve, this will be kind of where you can choose your different profiles, which you think how the new product will behave within its first year. And then it's a little bit small, but this will be kind of how with this show launch profile or slow launch profile, how the forecast is looking like for the plan. And if we change it to, say, we think it's going to be more like a seasonal launch, you see here how that will change our plan as well. And then you can also, for your seasonal profile, choose how you think it's going to behave at different points in the year as well. And then as you kind of review and set things up, once you have it to a good place where you think the plan is where you want it to be, you're able to lock that plan in, and that'll make it to where it will no longer be editable, and that way everyone will be on kind of the same page for how things are going to be looking for the next 3 years for that product. And as we scroll down more, we're getting more just kind of data points and information around how this new product will be behaving according to our settings up above across time, and its different contributions for your investment to launch, your ROIs, and whatnot there. And then the next kind of thing we're going to look into is the launch planning cannibalization. So this will be when a product is set up to take some of the volume from another product and kind of cannibalize it into itself. So we can see here we have a pre-set up one to where we're going to have the new 16-inch laptop cannibalize the product 13. And we're going to be basing the cannibalization strategy on product 13's existing volumes. And these values are ones that we can set manually for how we would like each year's percentages to be cannibalized. And if you want to kind of test a different one or set up multiple cannibalizations, we can use these action buttons here to set up those values as well. So if we're wanting the new laptop to also cannibalize, say, a new item, we can submit that. It takes a second as it'll be updating our list as over here. And then that'll allow us to then set up how we'd like the new item to be cannibalized as well. Or if we decide against that, we can also remove it out as well. And then that way, if it was either entered by mistake or we just decided against that cannibalization, we can manage that with ease as well. And then towards the bottom here is just going to be some key data points that will show your impact of the different cannibalizations that we have set up as well across time. And then this product launch curves is going to be how we're able to either set up new launch profiles or delete current ones that we have already in place but no longer see as being viable or useful. And then this will just kind of allow us to also manually update these different profiles as well if we need to tweak them a little bit more. And then for the final kind of relevant section for today's video, this will be a kind of just review dashboard of our finalized kind of MPI plans to where it can tie all the different MPI products that we have set up. And you'll be able to see a page that will allow you to kind of see what our coming weeks are looking like in regards to how they'll be impacted from either MPI plans or EOL plans, which we can talk about in a later video. That'll be kind of it for a video on the product lifecycle management. I will turn it over to Taylor, and he'll go over product segmentation.
Hi, everybody. I'm Taylor Brawley. I'll be talking about the product segmentation in terms of the supply chain apps for Anaplan. Here in the process, we are early on in. We're jumping around a bit here in the presentation. We are near the beginning, right after loading the order history. We will then feed into the ABC XYZ product segmentation. This will be for more informational purposes to help guide and help prioritize your time when planning for product segmentation or product planning. At a high level, product segmentation is going to be helpful when planning for a multitude of products. With more planning, there becomes it becomes essential in order to allocate your time and be able to know what time is going to be useful for your planning the best. In order to help you along, we are able to, at a high level, just categorize different products based on their sales volume and based on their demand. That is essentially what product segmentation is, specifically ABC XYZ segmentation. You will assign a ABC based on the sales volume, A being high volume, B being medium volume, C being low volume, and then a XYZ category, which will be based on the demand variance, X being constant variance, Y being seasonal variance for demand, and Z being random or sporadic demand. Let's see. With the Anaplan app, there are several pages that you have that are able to allow for customization with the different categories, as well as different analysis pages that will help guide which category the system recommends and which category you as a user want to sort your products into. There are a few parameters, not too many, for helping along with the analysis. We have the periods of history, for which will determine how many periods of sales history we want to use in the calculation for the ABC category. We have the specific history selection type. Your choices are between the selected history R and selected history U. And then we have the CVAR, or the coefficient of variance variation that will be used in order to calculate the XYZ category based on the system recommendation. Let's see, we have several pages, few for analysis. At a high level, we will be able to see this Pareto analysis graph. This is going to depict the sales volume based on a decreasing trend, starting with the highest volume of product and then continuing down. Then we have this trend line, which is based on the cumulative history that each of these products contribute towards the history. And we see that we start from the left and we go up into a almost logarithmic curve until it then smooths out at about 100%. Here we have the current system recommendations. As you see, it is color-coded here in order to determine which products are performing the best. We have here in the upper left, starting with AX, that this is going to be your high volume, high demand. Then as you navigate down your ABC, XYZ, you start going down in lower volumes and lower demand. And here the color coordination will let you know, moving from green to yellow to red in terms of the performance. There are further analysis pages that will specifically handle the ABC category analysis. We have the same parameters on the prior page, where you're able to select the periods of history and the history type that you want to utilize. We have key points here that will summarize the selected history based on the product to brand rollup, as well as to the product segment, the family, and all products. And then we have another graph for the history in a decreasing fashion. From there, after viewing the analysis, you're able to review the system recommendations for each individual product. Here, the system will give the recommendation based on thresholds that are configured on the admin pages. By default, the thresholds are going to be, I believe it is going to be about 0% to 60 for category A, which means it is performing the best, high demand or high sales volume. 60 to 90 for B, which would be moderate sales volume, and then 90 to 100 within that range for C. Here you're able to have the key points that will inform you the system recommendations that the system is making. You are able to allow for overrides, be able to make any custom modifications if you disagree with what the system is recommending. And you are able to then finalize all of the changes that have been made here with this update ABC process. Similarly, there is the review and finalization for the XYZ page. Here you're able to view the system recommendations purely based off of the coefficient of variance, the system recommendation, as well as making overrides or adjustments on a personal basis, and then able to then finalize it with the update XYZ process there. Let's see. And I think that is it for the product segmentation. From this point on, I will then pass it over to Mark for the promotions.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mark Chisholm, and I'll be covering the promotional aspect of Anaplan's supply chain apps. And what you're seeing here is what you've seen in previous snippets of various things that have been demonstrated during this session, is the actual landing page. And where we're going to focus here is right here. But where I actually want to start is here, consensus planning, because, some may question like where promotions planning fits in the overall demand planning process. So let's go ahead and just click on consensus planning for a second. And what I'm going to do is just is scroll down here and basically show that, ultimately the outcome of a demand planning process is an agreed upon consensus, which involves inputs from disparate groups across the organization. And the more people you can bring to the table, the more accurate your forecast is going to be. And so what Anaplan is able to achieve is, because of its ease of use and engaging user experience, it's able to appeal to multiple groups across the organization such that they can have input into the consensus demand and have a seat basically at the table. And if you take a look here, you can see that, one of the stakeholders, if you will, is the stat forecast, which Matt already talked about. And you might have also a machine learning stakeholder as well. Then you might have, input from the commercial planning group, as well as from marketing and finance as well. And so you have multiple disparate groups being brought together. And if you think about how those people work and what kind of data they would need, it's completely different. But what Anaplan is able to do is bring everybody together so that they can kind of work the way they want to work with the data that they need, the calculations that they need, etc., and the decisions that they need to make, but make them part of a connected whole, and such that their input flows into as a line item in the consensus demand such that now the demand planner can take into account everybody's different perspectives and inputs and ultimately arrive at, okay, what's the consensus plan going to be? And so promotional planning is part of is a stakeholder in that process, typically driven by your marketing or commercial revenue planning team, depending on how you're organized. But that's, one of those groups is going to be responsible for setting up promotions. So they're going to have the outcome of their process is going to be their contribution to the overall consensus demand plan. So then if we go back to that main landing page and click on promotional planning, what you're seeing here is basically, for a given account, different promos for that particular account. So you create promos and assign them to an account, and then you also assign items to those promos, and then basically populate different drivers to then ultimately arrive at what the promotional plan is going to look like. So in this particular case, we have Amazon USA, and we have several promos that we're running for Amazon. If we click on one, you can see here that you're able to, for that given promo, select a start date, how many days you're going to run that promo for. Anaplan then calculates the projected end date, but also takes into account how many days before that promo do you actually have to place orders to make sure that you have sufficient quantity of that product on hand when that promotion occurs, because you're going to have promotional lift that occurs as a result of that process. So when ultimately would you then have to essentially plan for, receipts to meet that promo? So what you have here is an immediate connection between the promo setup and the supply side of the organization, understanding when orders would have to be placed to make sure that product is on hand when those promos occur, and ultimately when your shipping orders have to be placed. And this all ties into the supply side, which we're not really talking about today. But ultimately, this, everybody's, these two different groups are connected together such that, once you decide, once you start planning a promo, decide on your shipping offset, that's going to trigger orders, purchase orders on the supply side to then, basically plan for those products to arrive. You also have different promo curves that you also have the ability to select from, and each one of these curves has a unique profile that then would kind of determine what that demand curve is going to look like. And so what you see here is also the ability to add a new promotional item. So what you have is your promotional header, so you can create overall promos. Then what you do is assign those promos to an account or a customer, and then assign items to those promos. And that's how the process works. And then as we kind of scroll down, you can see that for a given promo, and as I select it, you can see we have 2 products assigned for this promo. If I click on the 25% off one, we have 3 products assigned for this promo, and you can see here that a lot of these parameters are already populated in terms of what the curve length is, because basically when you pick a promotional curve, that determines what that curve looks like in terms of number of days. And again, you can disaggregate from, in this case, you'll notice that we're kind of looking at, days in this case. You could be originally looking at weeks, and kind of you can break that down depending on that curve. But basically here we have a 7-day curve length. This is what units we're going to need to spread on. So, and again, this could be based on historical information as well, based on historical promo lift. And again, what you're seeing here is kind of like a baseline starting point. And that's really what Anaplan Supply Chain Apps provide, is that pre-configured starting point. But then you also have Anaplan's, robust business user owned configuration capability that allows you to extend this as well. So potentially you could, look up historical promos and understand what that historical lift is going to be, and then maybe have an override on this that allows you to kind of say, okay, we think it's going to be 30,000 units or whatever. And then you also have other parameters that you can select, including is this currently in place? Is underway? So is it effective? And also to what's your promotional tactic? Whether it's a discount, whether it's a fixed price, whether it's some kind of rebate or redemption, you're able to pick these different tactics as well, and also enter the drivers associated with those tactics. And then ultimately, you're able to also assign costs to these promos, like if you have to have an end cap display or make some kind of investment, whether it be an off invoice scan or something to that effect, you're going to have to invest in these promos. You're going to have some kind of outlay, and then ultimately that's going to flow into this calculated section here, which looks at what's your base plan, what's the uplift associated with this. And, in this case here, we've got the uplift percentages calculated. Then you've got your uplift units, and also to ultimately what that, what your promotional costs look like, and also like what your ultimate, return on that promo is going to be. You define kind of your promotional details, your tactics, etc. And then and also to your investment. And then ultimately what Anaplan is able to do is bring all that together and tell you essentially what the ROI of this particular promo is looking like. So that's kind of how this sort of section works. If we were to kind of back up a little bit and look at, some of the drivers in terms of these curves and so on, first of all, you have the promotional header section. So this is where you actually create the promo. So you can actually add a new promo just by clicking on a button on the dashboard. You pick your account or customer you want to assign that promo header to, and you can easily just create that new promo header and then enter the number of days you want to run it for, shipping offsets, etc., and whether that promo is in play or not. And so that's how you get to that header section. And then also too, you have the promotional calendar, which is in the form of a Gantt chart. So depending on your start date and end dates of your promo, you'll have that sort of Gantt chart that tells you sort of how long that promo is running for from a visual standpoint. Then once you have your promotional header, then you're able to actually go in and modify the actual curves themselves. Bear with me for a second. This is where you're able to set those different curves. So in this case here, you'll also notice that we're looking at things on a daily basis, and you can pick your daily spread allocation in terms of here's your lift. How's that lift going to be spread? So you have the ability to first of all, enter that split. You could also, again, from an extensibility point of view, have all these historical splits available to you, and depending on the promo, and perhaps maybe it's a rolled over promo from a prior year, or it's a like promo, you could pick up that split behavior as well. So again, just talking about that extensibility of Anaplan as well. But also here's where you have the ability to first of all add a new promo curve, and then for that particular curve, give it a name. Give it a curve type. Is it based on percentage split? Is it a unit spread? And then also how many days you're going to run it for. And again, these attributes have been picked up in the prior dashboard as well in terms of the number of days of that promo. And then you can see some visuals in terms of how that's looking. And then basically what you have the ability to do is also modify that promo curve or do like overrides as well, right? Where you can have, the historical curve, and then perhaps have another line that allows you to kind of do an override on that as well. But basically this is how sort of that spread is looking. And here's the percentage calculations that then determines how that promo is going to look or behave over time. Then if we go down to actually managing the promotions, this is that other, this is again that prior dashboard where again you have your promotional header, you've got the details, then you have and again the promotional curve that you're following, and then ultimately the details of that promo in terms of the lift of units and so on, and ultimately what your tactics are, what your discounts are potentially, and also ultimately what that ROI, what that investment's going to be, as well as what that ROI is looking at. And that's just a quick look at Anaplan's promotional capabilities insofar as the out-of-the-box supply chain apps are. But again, keep in mind that, if you want to look at things like checkbook funding, because normally there is a bit of a top-down process that starts with, well, what's our promotional budget going to be and how are we going to spread that, populate that across our different accounts and so on. If you want to have that top-down approach. And then there's also things like post-event analysis that determines, looks at the performance profile of all your different promos, and ultimately gives you a look at comparing them and which ones you want to stop, start, and continue. That also could be configured within Anaplan, as well as the ability to carry over promos from prior fiscal years, so that you can easily have like a one-button rollover approach that basically allows you to take previous promos, carry those forward to the next promotional cycle, and then give you that starting point so you can just easily tweak some details about those promos, but then they're automatically in place and available. So now that really concludes this section of the demonstration. So now I'll turn it back to Chris.
Okay, so thank you, Mark. That was really good. I liked how you tied in the promotions to the consensus process, because that's a key part of what we're doing here with these supply chain apps. We're going to go over opportunity management. So in the process flow, after history correction, after product chaining, after segmentation, when all that stuff is complete, we generate the stat forecast. And once we have a stat forecast, once it's ready, we can begin enriching that forecast with our market intelligence. And so you can see from the process flow that there are several activities that we might do that help us to manage the many types of enrichments that are often applied to the stat forecast. And we see these things in deployment after deployment. These are definitely standard best practices that are being utilized. One of the ways we do this is by defining opportunities and risks, so we can estimate what their effect will be on our final consensus forecast. An example of an opportunity is I'm a salesman. I'm a salesman for my company, and I just got off the phone with a buyer at Walmart, and they're going to be adding in one of our items that we've had. They're going to add it into their distribution because they're happy with our brand. And I think there's a 90% chance after talking to the buyer that that's going to happen. So that's an opportunity. And then an example of a risk would be Target called and they're upset because 2 of our last 3 shipments were short of this item A. And so they're talking now about discontinuing item A completely. And I think there's a 50% chance that that will actually happen. So I'm going to define that when I define my opportunities so I can figure out how to best track these opportunities and risks onto my forecasts. Here's kind of the steps that they set up in the app, and I'll go over those on the app in a minute, but just as an overview. It allows you to import opportunities and risks from another system. Many companies use a CRM to define opportunities or risks, and if that's available, we'll import those. Then you can review and edit those that have been imported. Now, also, you can add your own opportunities or risks in the dashboard. You're going to define them at the customer and product level. So it might be an opportunity that has several products on it or more than one customer. You would define that in that area. And then as part of the setup process for new ops, we define which opportunities and risks will be included in the final demand plan. This can be done by defining what phases of opportunities get included. For example, if I've got an opportunity in the phase awaiting approval or closed, I might say, yeah, we're going to include that in the demand plan. But if it's in the pre-phase prior to that, I don't want it to include. The other way is by setting a threshold versus the percent chance. So when I said there was an 80% chance we're getting new distribution, and I have my threshold set, usually maybe 50 or 60%, at that point, it'll determine whether or not to include the value of that opportunity in the final plan. So it's just a way of companies to manage and to jointly manage as a group what they want to include and have visibility into what's included in the forecast and what updates and changes are made as a result. And then you would, as a last step, review the impact of these opportunities and risks on that final demand plan. Now, just quick to just go over the main parameters that are available to you as a user of this is A, criteria for inclusion in forecast. This is whether you're saying, I want it to be my values to be included in the forecast if it is in a certain phase of the opportunity, or if it's at a certain percent, or if it's both. So those are the options you have there. Then the minimum probability threshold is what, if you were using that as the threshold, then you would pick whether you want it to be 50, 60%, maybe you want it to be 80% and higher. It just depends on the scenario that you're running. The forecast value, this is whether or not you want to include the full value of the opportunity or risk, or a percentage of it based on that percent likelihood. And then allowing overrides for imported overrides, yes or no. So those are the main things that you can do to update the way that the system works. Now, these are the key screens. I'm going to go into it directly as opposed to showing it on PowerPoint. So this way we can get a better view of what's here. So this is kind of the main screen. This is D1150. This is opportunity management. And what this is giving me is a summary of everything that is in here to this point. So you can see right here, it's got 9 opportunities that have been defined. These are worth 587 million. And of those 9 opportunities, 4 of them are currently meeting the criteria that I've set to be included as part of the final forecast plan. And here are those parameters that we just discussed on the slide a minute ago, where we've got the criteria for forecast. So I've got it set that has to be both. It's stage included and minimum possible probability. And then you can see my stages are defined here. And for the stages, I'm saying that it has to be at least in negotiation otherwise don't include the value in the forecast. And it's even summarizing to me how much current value or how much currently is defined in our total opportunities at each of these phases. So closed, I've got 18 million. So those I definitely want to include. They're closed. We know that they're happening. But the other ones we may or may not include. And so we're using this stages as a criteria to determine inclusion in final forecast. Then there's some summaries as to what phases the percentage of our opportunities are currently in. And then here's the headers of the opportunity. So you can see here, these are the how many were there again? There were 9 separate opportunities. These are the 9 opportunities. And if you click on any specific one, you'll see the specific items below that are part of that particular opportunity. So you define it as a header, which is giving you the customer, the stage, and then when that forecast date would begin, when that opportunity would actually go into fruition and need to be counted. And then we would then have, when we set it up, we would say to recur value until. So if it is new distribution and we want to eventually use the stat model to predict that the value after we have maybe say 3 or 4 periods of actuals, I would want to recur whatever value I'm putting in for the first month for maybe 3 or 4 months or periods. So after the stat forecast takes over, I don't need to be double counting it or adding it into this opportunity management piece. And then below, there's even more information on what values are being added to the forecast and in what phases. And it's a really good overview of what opportunities have been put in there. The next screen is the stages. This is very simple. This is just where you're defining. So every company might have different phases or stages when they're determining what opportunities or risks that they want and how they want to manage that. So this is an example. This is kind of a default. It's got like 6 stages, and you can set them in any order you'd like, and you can add and remove them as needed. And then here's where you create the actual opportunity. So here I'm going to say, you can see that I've got the first 6 were imported, and they're coming from source CRM. And then the next 3 were the ones that I've added in as examples for that I've added in manually myself. And so we've got the header here where we give it the name and the customer, the stage, probability, the forecast date, and then the recurrence until. So you can recur until 6 months, however many you need. And then below here, I set up the actual items on each one. So once I add in a new opportunity, it won't have any value in it until I actually add in the detail line. So when I add a detail line, I'm going to say for opportunity 3, I have 2 different products that I want to add to that because these are new distribution opportunities at Walmart, for example. And these are the values of those based on the price and the volume that I'm predicting for this new opportunity. And so it's really fairly simple. It's fairly straightforward. You've got a lot of flexibility as how you can manage this when you're adding or deleting or importing opportunities from another system. You can edit and have a lot of flexibility and control over what gets included in that final forecast and what doesn't. And then you've got a single place to go to where all your departments can share the information as to what is being included in the forecast that's going to get acted upon by operations and supply. So that was a quick overview of the opportunity management piece. We also have one last thing to go over. We've got frequently asked questions that come up a lot. So we picked a few of them that we wanted to add to this webinar. And so let's jump into those right now. The first frequently asked question is, what are the differences between other market solutions and the current Anaplan supply chain apps? We have Michael LaHood online to help us answer that question.
Thank you, Chris. The difference between other market solutions and these current Anaplan supply chain apps is there is a much faster implementation on these new Anaplan apps. So you have a faster time to value and a much lower TCO, total cost, in your ARR and your services. Also, these are easy to use solutions. They're practical and they have sensible business processes. Therefore, that leads to a higher adoption rate with your users and retention of your users actually in the system and planning using these applications. These applications have underlying modern platform and supporting technologies. They use some very robust machine language and AI algorithms. And it is a truly fully integrated function and solution with true integrated business planning. So you can implement these apps and get your users in them quickly, and it's an easy learning curve. It's very straightforward. The user experience pages are set up very nicely. It's very intuitive. And also, these solutions are always on. That allows for real-time planning day in and day out. And it easily supports inside out and outside in planning solutions.
Okay, fantastic. That's a great answer. So the next question that we have is, what are the target industries for supply chain planning apps? I think Mark is going to answer that one for us.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So let's talk about for a moment, how Anaplan's organized from a vertical or industry point of view. If we think about their different segments, they have consumer, they have manufacturing, they have financial business services, and they have, technology, media, communications, and education. So if we think about sort of where these apps would apply across those verticals, obviously consumer would apply for CPG organizations, as well as retail. Retail is a bit of a unique animal just because, in a lot of cases, they have not only the retail piece in terms of, merchandise, financial planning, as well as, assortment planning as well. But they also have can also have a supply chain aspect as well. So apps will be applicable to that consumer, that CPG and retail segment under consumer. And of course, for manufacturing, you would have industrial and automotive as well as life sciences. And then under financial business services, believe it or not, if you're a financial, and again, this is a little bit of a unique case, but in some cases, financial services organizations might make credit cards and distribute those credit cards, in which case there'd be a supply chain aspect as well. So I'd say primarily consumer and manufacturing, consisting of, retail and CPG, industrial and auto and life sciences would be sort of the primary industries. But I would also broaden that a little bit to say, if you make something or you buy something, potentially you're a candidate for Anaplan's supply chain apps.
Okay, awesome. We've got another question. So number 3 is, what are the supply chain planning modules in the Anaplan apps? And I believe that question is for Logan.
So they consist of statistical forecasting, demand planning, inventory planning, rough cut, capacity planning, production planning, and S&OP. There might be some other ones I'm forgetting about, but those are kind of the main ones.
Great. Yeah, it's a pretty well-rounded suite when you look at all the different options that are out there. Okay, and then the last question is for Michael. So can a customer go partially with the supply chain suite? Like how hard would it be for me to have like just supply planning? Could I connect that with something else for demand?
Yes, each of these modules can be implemented independently and then integrated into the ecosystem as new applications are brought in.
Okay, great. That's fantastic news. There's a lot of versatility and flexibility with these new apps. I'm really glad about that. Okay, so thanks everybody for joining us for this. We've got a number of apps, a number of webinars that we've been doing over the past year, dropping them on YouTube regularly. So if you go to our YouTube channel, you can take a look at those. Feel free to comment and ask for some other topic that we could potentially cover. We do have a couple of additional topics that we'd like to cover soon, which would be similar to this, a demo deep dive into inventory planning, and then also a demo deep dive into production planning. But we've got videos on YouTube from a variety of things, everything from stat forecasting to the future of demand planning and of supply chain. So please check that out. If you want a copy of the presentation, please check the Accelytics.com website. We have the presentations there, and then the videos of our webinars on YouTube. So thanks again, everybody. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next one.